Here is something that should make every single person watching this video stop and think very carefully. Within 72 hours of an 84-year-old great-grandmother vanishing from her home in Tucson, Arizona, ransom notes demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin began arriving at media outlets across the country. Not at the FBI, not at the family, at the media. TMZ received one. Two Tucson television stations received others. The demands were specific: a Bitcoin wallet address, a deadline, graphic descriptions of consequences if payment was not made. Savannah Guthrie went on Instagram with her siblings and said three words that broke the nation's heart: "We will pay." Two deadlines came, two deadlines passed. The kidnappers went completely silent. No proof of life, no further contact, no Nancy. And sitting in the middle of all of this, a $6 million Bitcoin demand, a series of increasingly bizarre follow-up notes, and a detail buried in one of those letters that a retired FBI agent said immediately made him suspicious, is the question that blockchain forensics experts, former federal prosecutors, and true crime investigators cannot stop debating. Are these ransom notes even real? Because I have looked at every single detail, and what I found will make you question everything you thought you knew about this case. Nancy Guthrie disappeared on February 1st, 2026. By February 3rd, just 72 hours later, the ransom notes had already begun arriving. The first notes were sent simultaneously to TMZ and two Tucson local news stations, KOLD News 13 and KGUN 9. The timing alone was significant. Professional kidnappers who want money prioritize one thing above everything else: a direct, private, controlled line of communication with the family. They do not send ransom notes to celebrity gossip websites. They do not copy multiple media outlets simultaneously. They do not invite public attention into a negotiation that depends entirely on secrecy and control. And yet here were these notes, arriving at newsrooms, demanding Bitcoin, setting public deadlines, and containing a detail that one former FBI agent flagged immediately as deeply suspicious: the word USD. One of the ransom notes used the term USD, United States dollars, when referencing the demanded amount. A retired FBI agent told the New York Post that an American would be extremely unlikely to use that term. Americans say dollars. The abbreviation USD is the language of someone operating in international financial or foreign exchange contexts, someone for whom English is not their primary financial language. That single three-letter abbreviation sent investigators spiraling in a new direction entirely. First question for you right now: when you heard that the ransom notes were sent to media outlets instead of the family directly, what did that tell you? Does that sound like a professional kidnapper or someone playing a very dangerous game? Drop your answer in the comments. February 3rd, February 18th, 2026. Tucson, Arizona, and national media. Here is the complete timeline of the ransom notes, every single one, and what each one revealed. Note 1, the original demand. Sent simultaneously to TMZ, KOLD News 13, and KGUN 9 within 72 hours of Nancy's disappearance. Demanded millions of dollars in Bitcoin, specifically $6 million according to KGUN 9's reporting. Contained a specific Bitcoin wallet address, confirmed by TMZ to be a genuine address on the blockchain. Set a first deadline of 5 p.m. on February 5th. Included details about an item damaged at Nancy's home, a detail investigators were watching carefully to determine whether the sender had inside knowledge. The deadline passed. No payment confirmed, no contact from the kidnappers. Note 2, the second deadline. A follow-up communication set a new deadline, 5 p.m. on February 9th. Hours before that deadline, Savannah Guthrie released an emotional video on Instagram. She did not mention the ransom, but told the world her family believed Nancy was still out there and needed everyone's help. The deadline passed. Again, silence. Note 3, the information note. A separate individual, not claiming to be the kidnapper, sent TMZ a note demanding 1 Bitcoin, worth approximately $66,000 at the time, in exchange for the name of the person responsible for Nancy's disappearance. This note used a completely different Bitcoin address. TMZ forwarded it to the FBI. The tone, according to TMZ's own producers, was clearly different from the original ransom notes, suggesting it came from a different person entirely. Whether this person genuinely had information, was a scammer exploiting the situation, or was connected to the actual kidnapping in some way, remains unknown. Note 4, the highly sophisticated demand. The most chilling note of all, sent to TMZ weeks after the original communications. This note demanded a cryptocurrency other than Bitcoin, described by TMZ as a highly sophisticated demand. It asked for a sum similar to the original $6 million. It graphically described the consequences of non-payment, and it contained something that stopped everyone cold. It directly involved the media in the payment trigger. TMZ's own executive producer, Charles Ladabodire, described it as a very elaborate demand, in which the act of media reporting on the case was built directly into the conditions of payment. He called it a very bizarre and complex caper. This note was immediately forwarded to the FBI. Then came the detail that shifted the entire ransom narrative on its head. Activity was recorded in the Bitcoin wallet listed in the ransom note originally. At approximately 5 p.m. Arizona time on February 10th, the same day the FBI released the suspect footage, at least one transaction was made to the Bitcoin address from the first ransom note. The amount was not disclosed, but blockchain forensics experts immediately pointed to something critically important. Bitcoin transactions, while pseudonymous, are permanently recorded on a public ledger. Every wallet, every transaction, every digital fingerprint. Bezalel Ethan Revif, CEO of Lionsgate Network, a Bitcoin forensics firm, told the New York Post that the payment into that Bitcoin account could actually lead investigators directly to information about the suspect, because moving Bitcoin leaves traces, and those traces can be followed. Second question for you right now. Someone made a payment to the Bitcoin wallet in the ransom note on the same day the FBI released the suspect footage. Do you think that was a coincidence, or do you think the release of that footage triggered a response? Tell me what you think in the comments. The public reaction to the ransom notes was one of the most divided responses I have seen in any true crime case in recent memory. On Reddit, true crime communities split almost immediately into two camps. The first camp believed the notes were genuine, pointing to the specific details about Nancy's home, the legitimate Bitcoin addresses, and the escalating sophistication of each subsequent communication as evidence of an organized operation. The second camp, and this is the camp I find myself increasingly drawn to, pointed to the media targeting, the missed deadlines, the absence of proof of life, and the USD anomaly as signs that at least some of these notes were not from the actual kidnapper at all. The FBI itself has never publicly confirmed that any of the ransom notes are definitively connected to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos said he was absolutely not dismissing the notes, but that carefully worded statement is a very long way from confirmation. My personal opinion? I think there are at least two separate actors involved in the ransom note story, and possibly three. The original note sender, who may or may not be the actual kidnapper, The information seller, who claimed to know who did it and wanted 1 Bitcoin for the name, and potentially a third party, the sender of the highly sophisticated fourth note, who appears to have a completely different agenda and a far more complex understanding of cryptocurrency than a straightforward kidnapper would typically possess. The fact that the fourth note built media reporting itself into the payment trigger suggests someone who has been watching this case obsessively and understands how media cycles work. That is not the profile of a panicked kidnapper. That is the profile of someone playing an entirely different game. Forensic psychologists and hostage negotiation experts who have studied the ransom communications in this case point to a consistent and deeply troubling red flag: the complete absence of proof of life. In every legitimate kidnapping for ransom case on record, the captor's most powerful leverage is demonstrating that the victim is alive. A voice on a phone call,